He was an unknown officer when Pearl Harbor was attacked, but by the end of World War II, he had become the youngest major general in the US Army. Robert Tyrone Frederick was wounded 8 times, yet never left his men. He built the legendary 1st Special Service Force, the Devil's Brigade, and stormed impossible mountains in Italy with knives and bayonets. At Anzio, he terrified the Germans into retreat, earning Churchill's praise. If we had a dozen men like him, we would have smashed Hitler in 1942. He then created an airborne task force from nothing, jumped into France with a wounded leg, and cleared the path for victory. Finally, as commander of the 45th Infantry Division, he led his men across rivers through Germany's West Wall and liberated Dachau. In just 4 years, Frederick went from a desk officer in Washington to a fearless general with 28 medals for valor. This is the story of the Devil's General, a soldier who never asked his men to do what he would not do himself. Robert Tyrone Frederick was born on the 14th of March, year 1907, in San Francisco, growing up beside the Presidio, one of America's great military posts. As a boy, he wandered the barracks, the parade grounds, and the rifle ranges. While other children played with marbles, Frederick aimed rifles at the Presidio's targets. In school, he chose the junior ROTC, opting for discipline and marksmanship over gym class. By his teens, he was already trying to escape his parents' strict supervision, lying about his age to join the National Guard at just 14. When that failed, he joined the Maritime Union, again pretending to be older. His father gave up hope. But Frederick's path was clear. He wanted the Army. Determined, he joined the Enlisted Reserve Corps and then transferred to Staunton Military Academy in Virginia to complete his high school education. By year 1923, he had earned his way into West Point. At the academy, he excelled editor of the yearbook, fencing team member, a rifle and pistol expert, and company commander. In his second year, he met Ruth Adelaide Harlow, daughter of a Brooklyn surgeon. They married immediately after his graduation in 1928. He was commissioned into the Coast Artillery Corps, ready to begin his journey. Frederick's early Army years were routine. He served in Panama and later commanded a CCC camp during the Depression. Promoted to first lieutenant in 1934, he continued rising, graduating from the Coast Artillery School and the prestigious Command and General Staff School at Fort Leavenworth. In 1941, while stationed in Hawaii, he was promoted to the rank of major. Then came a fateful transfer to Washington, D.C., to the War Plans Division, where he worked under a man who would change the war, Dwight D. Eisenhower. When Pearl Harbor was attacked, Frederick feared his career would be stuck behind a desk. He was wrong. In London, Churchill pitched a daring idea to General George Marshall: create a small force of elite commandos to raid behind enemy lines in Arctic terrain. The plan involved snow sleds, sabotage, and suicide missions. Eisenhower handed the file to Lieutenant Colonel Frederick. His 14-page analysis shredded the concept, calling it dangerous, with no hope of extraction. But when Eisenhower approved the mission anyway, the British suggested Frederick himself lead it. Shocked, but undeterred, Frederick set to work. He built the first Special Service Force from scratch, comprising 2,400 Canadians and Americans who were trained at Fort William, Henry Harrison, Montana. They parachuted, skied, climbed mountains, and fought with knives. Frederick, who had only 2 parachute jumps in his life, insisted on sharing every risk. By September year 1942, they were ready. Their first mission, the Aleutian island of Kiska, ended without bloodshed. The Japanese had already fled. But Italy would test them like never before. In December year 1943, the FSSF was ordered to take Monte la Defensa, a fortress mountain blocking the road to Rome. Other divisions had failed. Frederick's solution? Climb the unclimbable cliff. At night, in rain and wind, he led his men silently up the rock face. Using knives and bayonets, they dispatched sentries, then launched their assault. Within 2 hours, Frederick radioed headquarters. La Defensa is ours. Officers recalled his indifference to danger. He walked exposed under mortar fire, his water bottle split by bullets, still urging his men on. When a mortar shattered his spine and shoulder, he shielded another soldier with his body before resuming command. Churchill, hearing of his success, remarked, "If we had a dozen men like him, we would have smashed Hitler in 1942. At Anzio, the FSSF earned its infamous nickname, the Devil's Brigade. Harassing Germans nightly, leaving stickers on corpses reading "The worst is yet to come," they terrified enemy soldiers into retreat. Even as casualties mounted, Frederick's reputation only grew fearless, relentless, and always at the front. Promoted to Brigadier General, Frederick was tasked to form another unit, the 1st Airborne Task Force. He had just 5 weeks. With his trusted staff, he assembled 16 units, trained them rigorously, and then led them into southern France. On landing, he tore open his old leg wound, but tied it off with parachute cord and kept fighting. Within 24 hours, his men captured 1,350 prisoners, cleared key roads, and stunned the German defense. General Lucien Truscott called it the most remarkable exploit of the war. In late year 1944, Frederick was assigned to the 45th Infantry Division, also known as the Thunderbirds. At just 37, he was the youngest ground division commander in the US Army. His men, hardened veterans, at first doubted him, but soon came to respect his courage. He led them across the Rhine, smashed through Germany's West Wall, and captured Aschaffenburg after rejecting surrender negotiations with the words, "There is absolutely nothing to be negotiated. You can defend to the last man, or it will be a total surrender." Soon, the Thunderbirds stormed Nuremberg and Munich, liberating the Dachau concentration camp. Frederick now faced not only battle, but the humanitarian crisis of feeding and housing over 124,000 prisoners and survivors. By war's end, he had commanded 3 different legendary formations, fought 551 days in combat, and earned 28 American medals and 6 foreign honors. He was only 38 years old. After the war, Robert Frederick continued to serve at the highest levels of government. He commanded the Coast Artillery School at Fort Monroe, Virginia, and when it was disbanded in 1947, he helped organize the new Air University at Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. Later, he took command of U.S. occupation forces in Vienna, Austria, and then returned to the United States to lead the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Ord, California, which was headquartered at the very Presidio where he had grown up as a boy. There, he introduced his division faculty training system, realistic infantry and armored exercises that the entire US Army would later adopt. Though he hoped for a combat command in Korea, he was instead sent to Greece as chief of the US Military Aid Group, guiding one of America's most important Cold War missions. But by the time he returned to the United States, his body was paying the price for years of war. He checked into Walter Reed Army Hospital, where doctors ran a battery of tests. The findings were grim. The carbon monoxide poisoning he had suffered in the tunnels of Anzio had permanently damaged his health. His heart was enlarged, his right leg had never healed properly, and he had suffered lasting hearing loss, deaf in his left ear and damaged in his right. At the age of 44, Frederick was granted a disability retirement. He returned to Palo Alto, California to live quietly with his family. The man who had stormed cliffs, liberated cities, and commanded thousands of men now fought a private battle with his health. On the 29th of November, year 1970, Robert Tyrone Frederick passed away at just 63 years old. Robert Tyrone Frederick was not a household name, but to the men who followed him, he was a legend. Wounded 8 times, yet always returning building units from nothing, yet always leading from the front. The Germans feared him, Churchill praised him, and his soldiers loved him. He never asked them to do what he would not do himself. That is why history remembers him, fittingly, as the Devil's General.